Guilt and shame have been given a lot of bad press in our culture, I think, for the last little while, and it's understandable why, because they can be used in highly manipulative ways, and it's quite easy to make someone feel guilt and shame for things which they aren't actually guilty of, or indeed things they shouldn't be ashamed of. But a group of people can coalesce around an issue in such a way as to create a sense of guilt or shame in order to manipulate a person or people in a particular way. And I have to say, religion has been exceptionally effective in that regard. But having said that, I also want to put in a plug for the idea that guilt and shame both have legitimate roles in our social life and our sense of ourselves. Because guilt is that experience that we have when we know we've done something that has hurt somebody else. Certainly we can be manipulated into thinking that we've hurt someone when we haven't really. They've just taken exception to something and it's not our fault. But there are also those times when, for whatever reason, by accident or thoughtlessness or by deliberate design, we set out to hurt someone. There are times when we need that experience of guilt because we've kind of abrogated the social fabric. We've done something that's going to put at risk our relationship, and we need to know that, because the alternative of not feeling guilt when we've done something wrong would leave us not just unaccountable in the broader world, but unaccountable within ourselves, which is a really important thing. So guilt has that mechanism in it that stops us in our tracks for a moment. Of course, there is a skill in working out, is this legitimate guilt or am I being manipulated? And that's an important distinction to be made, as I've been saying. But yeah, guilt does have its place, and shame likewise. Shame is that thing that we experience, again, when we know we've done something that's abrogated the social fabric, and that if everybody behaved the way we've just behaved, then society would fall down. And we've got some stunning examples of shameless behaviour in the media and in politics these days. And in a strange reflex at the moment, some of these people have become very popular for their shamelessness. But if you imagine a world where every single person behaved like that, it would be worse than chaos, it would be destruction. And so shame is that thing that we experience when we know that we have behaved in a way that is detrimental to the society, to the group that we're part of. And that's the appropriate sense of shame. Again, it can be manipulated. People can conspire together to create a sense that something is acceptable or isn't acceptable, and that may or may not have anything to do with the well-being of society. But there is also that legitimate sense of shame. So, guilt and shame have had a lot of bad press, and there's good reason why they've had a lot of bad press, and they are really ready triggers for manipulation. But there is some guilt and some shame that is there because we need to wake up to ourselves. And the only way to be free from the sense of guilt and shame, if it's legitimate, is to change. And in the Bible there's an idea called repentance, where you say, I'm not going to do it that way anymore, I'm going to do it in a new or different way. And that's the only way to beat legitimate guilt and legitimate shame. You confess to yourself and to anyone else who you need to. You make good anything that you can make good, and then you decide to do it differently going forward. It's pretty old school, but it leaves you in a much happier place in your sense of well-being, in your conscience, in your relationships. So guilt and shame, it's a thing, and well worth considering from time to time if they're experiences that you have. If you have no experience of guilt or shame, that's interesting too, because none of us ever live a life where we escape being guilty or do nothing that's shameful. So God bless, stay faithful, see you around the place.